The Silver Island Mountains are situated along the Nevada border about 15 miles northeast of Wendover. This 35,000 plus acres of public land offers a multitude of hiking and camping opportunities, and the best way to experience this rugged and dry wilderness is the Silver Island Mountains Backcountry Byway, a 54-mile long loop along a well-graded dirt road that encircles the mountain range. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today. We are out along the Silver Island Mountains Backcountry Byway out here on the western side of the Bonneville Salt Flats, and we are exploring this backway. We're checking out some of the campsites. This is a really nice area to come out to. This is all BLM land. It is open for dispersed camping, and there's a lot of really good hiking around here. This is looking towards the east. The big peaks you see in the distance are the Stansbury Mountains, and there's a lower mountain range in front of it called the Cedar Mountains, and we are seeing them across the Bonneville Salt Flats. So we pulled off in this little section here. This is a really nice area to camp. There are a whole bunch of areas that you can camp along these mountains right here, and most of these campsites are pretty clean, which is nice to see. Sometimes these public campsites that are close to towns, like this one's fairly close to Wendover and not too far off of I-80, they tend to get kind of dirty sometimes. But today we are going to hike up there. There's that big cave. I don't know if you can see it from here, but we're going to hike up to that area and check it out. Really nice rock formations in here. Well, this is certainly a nice campsite. Flat, relatively level, and look at that view. Doug seems to approve too. This rugged limestone range has a long and interesting history. Many of the small alcoves and overhangs show signs of early human habitation, with either smoke stains, small stone walls, and faint pictographs on the walls. The bedrock that makes up the range includes faulted and folded fossil-bearing limestone, and the slopes of the range have been terraced by shoreline erosion and deposition from ancient Lake Bonneville, erosion that can be easily seen to this day. We have quite a view from up here. Looking in this direction, the big mountains to the south with all the clouds on them are the Deep Creek Mountains. And you can see that turquoise blue water out there. That is one of the evaporation ponds for some sort of a mineral extraction, salt extraction company that operates out here on the western side of the Bonneville Salt Flats. And as we look in this direction, out in the distance, we can see the Fish Creek Range. We can see the Dugway Mountains. Way out there in the distance, I can see the Sheeprock Mountains, and even farther in the distance, I can see Mount Nebo, which is the highest peak in the Wasatch Mountains. All right, so we're going to go wander up into this cave and check it out. It's pretty cool looking. At first, I was thinking maybe this was part of an old mine. There's a lot of old pieces of metal up here. Car parts, stuff like that. Well, it looks fairly natural. This shelf that we were sitting on earlier is part of the Lake Bonneville shoreline. You can see it goes all the way around, curves around over there. We hiked out to this point that gave us a little bit more of a view here of the Bonneville Salt Flats. So the shoreline, you could just keep walking along this and it's pretty much level and it just snakes all along these mountains. You could probably hike it all the way around the island. Actually, sounds like a pretty fun thing to do. But it is just gorgeous out here today. A little windy, still very nice though. These rocks up here are really interesting. It's quite a conglomeration of different material. Well, got some spare parts laying around here. I don't think these are too usable at this point. Yeah, I'm kind of curious to find out what went on up here. That's a pretty steep road to haul things up. You know, though, it's quite possible that this was some kind of maybe a crash site. Some of these things look like they might be old aviation equipment. And there's this flag up here. So maybe this is kind of a makeshift memorial? Yeah, I don't know if these are aircraft parts. Seems like there would be a lot more aluminum in there. We're looking south. That is the Deep Creek Mountains in the distance and I-80 running across the salt flats right before Wendover. And we came in on this dirt road here. This is another campsite with fantastic views. You've got all sorts of views of the Stansbury Mountains and the Cedar Mountains. And if you look north, you can look deeper into the Silver Island Mountains. And on this side, you can see this road continues on, and I suspect it goes up to what looks like some caves up there. And probably some good camping up in those little alcoves. This is another pretty nice spot to camp at. If you end up camping here, somebody left a big pile of firewood. We're going to walk up this hill to these little alcoves and check it out. So if you have a capable truck, you could probably drive up here and camp. But you're definitely going to need something high clearance and four-wheel drive. Well, this certainly looks interesting, and looks like some people have camped here before. Doesn't go back too far. So we found this little path just next to that cave that looks like it leads up to the top of these rocks. So we're going to follow this and take a look. Well, this turned out to be really nice. This is just above the cave, and we've got a really nice view of this little valley. And I forget what this mountain is called. It has a name. I'll put it on the screen. Good morning, everybody. We are back out here in the Silver Island Mountains in western Utah, and we're going to continue our drive up the road. The Silver Island Backcountry Byway is about 60 miles, and we're going to drive the whole thing here today and tomorrow. One of the really nice things about this place is that there is a lot of dispersed camping. So we got out here last night and we found this campsite. This is right up by that cave that I had shown you yesterday. We got some nice drone footage. We had a really nice sunrise this morning. We have a great view here. I will turn this around over here. This is the Great Salt Lake Salt Flats and the Great Salt Lake Desert. It's a little hazy this morning because we had a lot of wind, but as you can see, there's a very nice view to be had up here. It's a really nice place to camp. We're going to pack things up and hit the road, and we're going to take all of you along with us. We'll see you in a little bit. In 1846, the Donner Reed Party journeyed through this part of the country and left their mark on the range as they crossed the mudflats around the north end of Floating Island and then west between the Silver Island Mountains and Crater Island on what was called the Hastings Cutoff. Trying to save time by taking this shortcut is what delayed the Donner Reed Party's arrival at the Sierra Nevadas, where they became stuck high in the mountains at the now famous Donner Pass. We are out at the northeastern tip of the Silver Island mountain range. I don't know if you can make it out in the distance, but you can see the Stansbury Mountains and Deseret Peak way out there. But of course, you can see a lot of the Great Salt Lake salt flats. We'll pan around over here. This is looking south. But along here, we have this nice interpretive center. So this is also a spot along the Hastings Cutoff Trail. This is the one that was taken by the Donner Reed Party after they left the Cedar Mountains and managed to make their way across the Great Salt Lake Desert. And then over here is a map of where they went. You can see where they cut across Tooele Valley out to the tip of the Stansbury Mountains. Then they went down to a place called Horseshoe Springs. Now, if you're interested in seeing a video about that, I will put a link right up here that you can go and check out. I also did a video on Hastings Pass out here in the Cedar Mountains. I will also place a link up there if you're interested in seeing that one. You can see how they had cut across this valley and onto the Great Salt Lake Desert and the Salt Flats and worked their way all the way over here to the tip. Right here at Donner Spring is, of course, the next fresh water that they were able to find after leaving Horseshoe Springs. And it was a pretty rough trip for them. The Great Salt Lake Desert with horse-drawn wagons and livestock and everything is a pretty tough thing to cross. Here's a picture of James and Margaret Reed. In this panel, it talks about that they set out in the evening to try and reach water, but everybody became exhausted. They had to stop and lay down. And they ended up having a cold hurricane wind blowing. And they had 4 dogs they had to all lay down with to help keep them warm. Well, we're going to get back on the road and go a little farther down here and probably start looking for a campsite here in the next couple hours. We'll be back in a little bit. We are at Donner Reed Pass right now, and they have this interpretive sign set up. These are pretty new. We ran into the guy that did all of this work earlier today when we were getting some drone footage. It's kind of nice to stop by and see these. I'm not going to read all of this out to you right here, but they're pretty nice. They're pretty new. They explain what the immigrants went through as they traveled the 90 miles from Horseshoe Springs over in Skull Valley to Donner Springs at the foothills of the Pilot Range and Pilot Peak. This talks about the conditions of the Hastings Cutoff and that it really wasn't a good idea. And by 1850, nobody was even using it. This is a really cool area here, and it's a beautiful day out. It's a little windy. We're going to be heading in this direction here. That is Pilot Peak right there. I hope to one day do a hike up there. It's a really nice looking mountain. But we're going to head on down the road here and start looking for a campsite for tonight. Eventually, we found ourselves a great campsite at the base of some ancient rocks that look as if they were split apart by a giant hammer eons ago. Our campsite had beautiful views of Pilot Peak and was a perfect place to watch the dust devils spin through the valley below. The Silver Island Mountains are mostly a lonely and empty place these days, but offer an abundance of quiet solitude. The scenic byway draws some traffic, but on the several trips we've done to the range, we've never seen more than another car or two, and on most trips we haven't run into anyone once we got a few miles down the dirt road. This is a great place to lose yourself and get away from the world. Well, we got up this morning after a really windy night and had to pack up and get out. That over there is Pilot Peak in those clouds, and it is snowing. So we're going to head back into town. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed this video. This has been the Silver Island Mountains Backcountry Byway. It's a really nice place to come out and check out. I'd highly recommend it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give us a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos about hiking and camping out here on America's public lands, consider subscribing to this channel, and you can join us next time. We'll see you guys then.